Daniel Brooks was gripping a baseball bat, standing frozen in his own hallway, listening to a stranger shower in his bathroom. After 7 years of raising his daughter alone, protecting their fragile routine, keeping the world at arm's length, someone had just walked through his door uninvited. His hands shook. His daughter was at school. He was alone with an intruder. But when the water stopped and a woman's voice called out in confusion, nothing could have prepared him for what happened next. The wrong door was about to change everything. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far this story travels. And if you're ready for a journey about unexpected love, second chances, and the beautiful chaos of letting someone in, hit that like button and stay with me until the end. Trust me, you won't see this coming. Daniel Brooks had learned to measure his life in small, predictable increments. Morning coffee at 6:15, toast with butter, never jam. His daughter Mia's backpack by the door checked twice. Lunch packed the night before. Every sock matched. Every routine honored. It was how he survived. 7 years as a single father had taught him that chaos was the enemy. Spontaneity was a luxury he couldn't afford. Not when he was both mother and father, breadwinner and bedtime story reader, homework helper and heart mender. Not when one misstep could mean Mia's world crumbling again, the way it had when her mother left without warning, without explanation, without looking back. So Daniel built walls out of schedules. He constructed safety from repetition. And he convinced himself that this was enough. It was a Tuesday in late September when those walls shattered. Daniel had dropped Mia at school, exchanged the usual pleasantries with the crossing guard, waved to familiar faces in the drop-off line. He'd stopped at the hardware store for picture hooks. Mia had been asking to hang her artwork, and he'd been putting it off for weeks. Guilt was a constant companion in his parenting, always whispering that he wasn't doing enough, wasn't being enough. He pulled into his driveway at 9:43, arms full of groceries he'd grabbed on impulse. The house looked exactly as he'd left it. Quiet, secure, his. He was thinking about whether to surprise Mia with her favorite pasta for dinner when he heard it. Water running. Daniel froze with his keys still in the lock. His first thought was catastrophic. A burst pipe, flooding, destruction of the careful life he'd built. But this wasn't the chaotic rush of broken plumbing. This was steady, controlled, deliberate. Someone was using his shower. The grocery bags hit the porch with a dull thud. Daniel's mind raced through impossible scenarios. A break-in. An intruder. Someone who'd been watching, waiting, who knew his schedule, who knew Mia would be at school, who knew he'd be alone. His hands trembled as he pushed the door open slowly, careful not to make sound. The house was exactly as he'd left it. Mia's cereal bowl still in the sink, his coffee mug on the counter, the newspaper folded where he'd abandoned it mid-article. Nothing disturbed, nothing wrong. Except for the sound of running water coming from the bathroom down the hall. Daniel's heart hammered against his ribs. He thought of Mia, of what would happen to her if something happened to him, of how his ex-wife would swoop in, take custody, uproot everything stable Mia had ever known. The thought propelled him forward even as fear urged him to call the police, to run, to do anything but confront whoever was in his house. He grabbed the baseball bat from the hall closet, the one Mia had used for exactly 1 season before deciding she preferred soccer. His grip tightened around the worn wood. He took 3 silent steps toward the bathroom door. The water stopped. In the sudden silence, Daniel could hear everything, the drip of the faucet, the rustle of a shower curtain, his own ragged breathing. He raised the bat, positioned himself, prepared for the door to open. "Oh my God!" A woman's voice, young, horrified. Oh my God, this isn't..." Daniel's finger hovered over his phone, 911 ready to dial. "Come out slowly," he called, trying to keep his voice steady, authoritative. "I'm armed. I've already called the police." A lie, but a necessary one. "Please don't. I can explain. This is so embarrassing. I'm so sorry. I thought I..." "Out. Now. Hands where I can see them." There was a long pause. Daniel heard movement. The sound of someone wrapping themselves in a towel, muttering what sounded like prayers or curses, or both. The door opened 6 inches. A woman's face appeared in the gap, mid-30s, dark wet hair plastered to her head, mascara smudged beneath wide, terrified eyes. She was clutching a towel to her chest with one hand, the other raised in surrender. "I'm so sorry," she said quickly. "I'm not a criminal. I'm not here to steal anything. I moved into 247 Maple yesterday, and the realtor said the door sticks, and you have to jiggle the key, and I thought this was my house, but clearly it's not, and I am so sorry." Daniel stared at her, bat still raised, trying to process the flood of words. "You're telling me you accidentally broke into my house and took a shower?" "I didn't break in. The door was unlocked and I thought—" She stopped, seemed to register the bat, the fear in his eyes. Her own fear melted into something closer to mortification. "You're 247? I'm looking for 245. This is 245 Maple, right?" "This is 247. The woman closed her eyes, and Daniel watched genuine horror wash over her features. "Of course it is. Of course. Because why would anything go right today?" She started to push the door open further, seemed to remember she was in a towel, and pulled it back. "Can I please just grab my clothes and get out of your life forever? I swear I'm not dangerous. I'm just the most disorganized, directionally challenged disaster of a human being who's ever existed." There was something about the self-deprecating panic in her voice that made Daniel lower the bat slightly. Something authentic in her embarrassment that didn't fit the profile of a home invader. "Your clothes are in my bathroom?" "In a pile. On the floor. Next to what I now realize is definitely not my shampoo, because mine is in a box in my actual house 2 doors down where I should have been this entire time." Daniel found himself caught between residual fear and the absurd urge to laugh. "How did you not notice this wasn't your house?" "Because I haven't actually been inside my house yet. The movers aren't coming until this afternoon, and I had a job interview in—" She glanced at something beyond the door, probably a clock, and her face went pale. "Oh no, no. "What?" "My interview is in 37 minutes, downtown. I haven't done my hair or makeup. I'm wearing your towel, and my car is apparently parked in front of the wrong house, like a creepy stalker vehicle." She pressed her hand to her forehead, and Daniel saw her shoulders start to shake. For a horrible moment, he thought she was crying. Then he realized she was laughing. High, slightly hysterical, but genuine. "This is it," she said. "This is rock bottom. I've broken into a stranger's house, stolen their shower, and I'm about to miss the interview that was supposed to save my entire career. My mother was right. I should have stayed in Ohio." Daniel felt something shift in his chest. Maybe it was 7 years of careful control cracking. Maybe it was the sheer absurdity of the situation. Maybe it was the fact that this woman's rock bottom seemed to genuinely involve no malice, just spectacular bad luck. He lowered the bat completely. "What kind of interview?" The woman's eyes opened. She looked at him warily, as if expecting a trap. "Senior project manager, tech firm. It's the only reason I moved here. I've been trying to break into this company for 3 years, and they finally gave me a shot, and I'm going to blow it because I can't tell the difference between 245 and 247. "You have 37 minutes?" 36 now." Daniel looked at her, really looked at her, saw the desperation beneath the embarrassment, saw someone whose life was balanced on a knife's edge, same as his, just in a different way. He made a decision that 7 years ago Daniel would have called insane. "Get dressed. You can do your hair and makeup here. I'll get you coffee." She stared at him. "What?" "You said you need to get ready. Get ready. I'm not going to be responsible for you missing your interview because you accidentally picked the wrong house to shower in." "You're serious?" "Do I look like I'm joking?" She studied his face, searching for the catch. "You were just about to call the police." "I was, but you're clearly not a threat. You're just—" He paused, searching for the right word. "A disaster?" she offered. "I was going to say having a bad day. Get dressed. Clock's ticking." The woman hesitated one more second, then nodded quickly and disappeared behind the door. Daniel heard her moving fast, muttering to herself. He walked to the kitchen on autopilot, his hands still shaking slightly from the adrenaline, and started the coffee maker. What was he doing? He didn't let strangers into his life. He didn't do spontaneous. He didn't help people he didn't know, especially people who'd just violated the sanctity of his carefully controlled space. But something about her frantic honesty had disarmed him. Something about the way her disaster felt human rather than threatening. The bathroom door opened and she emerged, dressed in a simple black suit that was slightly wrinkled, her wet hair wrapped in one of his towels. She stopped when she saw him in the kitchen, coffee mug in hand. "I don't know whether to thank you or apologize again or both." "Start with your name," Daniel said, handing her the mug. "If you're going to use my shower, I should at least know what to call you." "Lena." She took the coffee gratefully, wrapped both hands around the mug. "Lena Whitmore, professional home invader and career disaster." Daniel Brooks, confused homeowner and apparently impromptu interview prep assistant. Lena laughed. A real one this time, low and genuine. "Is this the weirdest morning you've ever had?" "Top 3, easily." "Only top 3? "I have a 7-year-old daughter. There's a lot of competition." Something shifted in Lena's expression. A softness. A recognition. "You're doing this alone?" Daniel nodded, not trusting himself to elaborate. "Then you really didn't have to help me. You could have kicked me out, called the cops, made this so much worse. Why didn't you?" It was a good question. Daniel wasn't entirely sure of the answer himself. Maybe it was because helping someone else's crisis made him feel less alone in his own. Maybe it was because he remembered what it felt like to be desperate, to need a break, to have your entire future hinging on one moment going right. Or maybe it was simpler than that. Maybe he was just tired of every interaction being transactional, distant, safe. "Because everyone deserves a chance to not have their life fall apart," he said finally. "Bathroom's yours. You've got 30 minutes. There's a hairdryer under the sink." Lena looked at him for a long moment, and Daniel saw gratitude there, but also something else. Curiosity, maybe. Recognition. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I mean it. Thank you." She disappeared back into the bathroom, and Daniel heard the hairdryer kick on. He stood in his kitchen, surrounded by the familiar markers of his routine. The dishes, the grocery list on the fridge, Mia's artwork held up by magnets, and felt like he was standing in someone else's life. 28 minutes later, Lena emerged transformed. Her hair was styled, her makeup subtle but professional, her suit smoothed. She looked capable, confident, nothing like the panicked woman who'd opened the bathroom door in a towel. "How do I look?" she asked, doing a small turn, like someone who's about to nail an interview. "I hope you're right." She grabbed her purse, checked her phone, winced. "I have to run, but Daniel, thank you, really, for not calling the police, for the coffee, for being inexplicably kind to a stranger who broke into your house." "You're welcome. And Lena?" She paused at the door. "Good luck." She smiled, bright and genuine, and then she was gone, the door clicking shut behind her with the same quiet finality it always did. Daniel stood in the sudden silence of his house, wondering what had just happened, wondering why his carefully ordered world felt suddenly less stable, less certain, wondering why he was already hoping she got the job. The coffee maker beeped, reminding him that there was still half a pot left. He poured himself a cup and sat at the kitchen table, staring at the chair Lena had briefly occupied. His phone buzzed. A text from Mia's teacher. "Parent-teacher conference next week? Want to discuss Mia's progress." Back to reality. Back to routine. Back to the predictable shape of his life. He texted back confirmation, finished his coffee, and tried to forget about dark eyes and genuine laughter and the strange electricity of an unexpected morning. It should have ended there. Should have been a bizarre story he'd tell someday, laugh about, file away under things that happened once. But 3 hours later, his doorbell rang. Daniel opened it to find Lena standing on his porch, holding 2 takeout bags and wearing a smile that made his careful defenses wobble. "I got the job," she said, "and I figured the least I could do was buy lunch for the man who made it possible. Plus, I need to return your towel and apologize approximately 800 more times." Daniel knew he should say no, should maintain boundaries, should protect the routine that kept him and Mia safe. Instead, he stepped aside and opened the door wider. "I hope you like Thai food," Lena said, walking past him into the house like she belonged there, "because I panic ordered enough for 6 people. And just like that, the walls Daniel had spent 7 years building started to crack. They ate at his kitchen table, the same table where Daniel usually sat alone with spreadsheets and grocery lists and the quiet hum of his controlled life. Lena unpacked container after container, pad thai, spring rolls, green curry, mango sticky rice, spreading them across the surface with the unselfconscious enthusiasm of someone celebrating. "Tell me you got the job because of your qualifications and not because you showed up on time," Daniel said, watching her serve him food without asking, as if they'd done this 100 times before. "Both, I hope. Though showing up on time was definitely your contribution." She handed him a plate piled high. "They asked me about managing cross-functional teams, and I may have told them a story about how I managed to accidentally break into someone's house this morning and still maintain enough composure to make it to the interview." "You told them that?" "Why not? It demonstrated adaptability, crisis management, and creative problem solving. Plus, it made them laugh." She took a bite of spring roll, pointed at him with her chopsticks. "Turns out honesty is memorable. Who knew?" Daniel found himself smiling despite himself. There was something disarming about her openness, the way she turned disaster into narrative, embarrassment into humor. "So you're staying in the city," he said. 247 Maple is really your place." "For now, assuming I don't accidentally wander into any more neighbors' houses." She paused, looked around his kitchen, the crayon drawings on the fridge, the small soccer trophy on the counter, the photo of Mia from last year's school picture day. "You have a beautiful home. I'm sorry I violated it. I'm over it, mostly." "Only mostly? I'm still not sure I won't wake up tomorrow and find you in my shower again." Lena laughed, and the sound filled spaces in the house that had been quiet too long. "I promise, cross my heart, I will never enter your house without an explicit invitation ever again." "What about implicit invitations?" The question surprised them both. Daniel felt heat rise in his face, realizing how it sounded, how it revealed more than he'd intended. But Lena just smiled, soft and knowing. Those two. Only the most formal, engraved, impossible to misinterpret invitations from now on. They fell into easier conversation after that. Lena told him about her old job in Ohio, the toxic work environment that had driven her to look elsewhere, the leap of faith it took to move across the country for a position that wasn't guaranteed. Daniel found himself talking about Mia, her love of soccer, her stubborn independence, the way she sometimes looked at him with her mother's eyes and broke his heart. 7 years is a long time to do it alone, Lena said quietly. You must be exhausted. Every single day. But you keep going. What else would I do? Lena looked at him with something that might have been admiration. A lot of people would have given up, sent her to live with relatives, decided it was too hard. She's my daughter. There's no version of my life where I don't fight for her. Even when it costs you everything else? The question landed heavy between them. Daniel thought about the promotions he'd turned down, the relationships he'd never pursued, the life he'd put on hold indefinitely. He thought about the loneliness that lived in his chest like a permanent ache, the way he sometimes caught himself talking to Mia like she was an adult because there was no one else to talk to. Even then, he said. Lena reached across the table and squeezed his hand once, quick and gentle. She's lucky to have you. The touch burned. Daniel pulled back, not because he didn't like it, but because he liked it too much, because it reminded him of everything he'd forgotten to want. I should get going, Lena said, reading his retreat correctly. She started packing up the containers, efficient and careful. You've already given me way more of your time than I deserved. You brought lunch. I brought apology food. There's a difference. She stood, gathering the bags. But seriously, Daniel, thank you. For this morning, for trusting me when you had no reason to, for making this disaster of a day into something almost magical. Magical. The word hung in the air between them. Will I see you around? Daniel asked, then immediately regretted the question. Too eager, too obvious. But Lena's smile was warm. We're neighbors now, 2 doors down. I think it's inevitable. She left her number on a napkin, ostensibly so he could text her if he ever needed anything. But they both knew it was more than that. It was a door left open, an invitation to more than accidental proximity. After she left, Daniel stood in his kitchen, staring at the napkin, feeling the weight of possibility settle over him like snow, beautiful and terrifying, and capable of changing everything. A week passed, then 2. Daniel saw Lena in passing, getting her mail, carrying groceries, leaving for work in the morning. They waved, exchanged pleasantries, maintained careful distance, but the napkin stayed on his counter, and Daniel caught himself looking for her car in the mornings, timing his own departures to coincide with hers, inventing reasons to check the mailbox when he knew she'd be outside. Mia noticed. "Who's the lady at 247?" she asked one Saturday morning, watching Daniel watch Lena load boxes into her car through the window. "Just a neighbor, sweetheart." "You look at her funny." "I do not." "You do. You get all smiley and weird." Mia studied him with the unnerving perception of children. "Do you like her?" Daniel felt his daughter's question like an accusation and a permission all at once. "I don't know her well enough to like her." "But you want to." "Mia, it's okay, Dad. You're allowed to like people. You're allowed to be happy." The words came from his 7-year-old daughter with the wisdom of someone much older, someone who'd watched him sacrifice too much for too long. "When did you get so smart?" Daniel asked, pulling her into a hug. "I've always been smart. You just don't always notice." That afternoon, Daniel texted Lena. Just a simple message. "Coffee sometime?" Her response came within minutes. "Thought you'd never ask." They met at a cafe halfway between their houses, neutral ground that felt less loaded than either of their homes. Lena showed up in jeans and an oversized sweater, her hair loose, her face free of the professional mask she wore for work. She looked younger, softer, more real. "So this is weird, right?" she said, sliding into the booth across from him. "Having coffee with someone whose shower you stole?" "Deeply weird," Daniel agreed, "but I'm willing to overlook it." "Generous of you." They ordered drinks, black coffee for him, some elaborate latte for her. And then they talked, really talked, about everything and nothing. About Lena's work, the challenges of breaking into a new team, the satisfaction of building something from scratch. About Daniel's job as an accountant, the monotony he'd learned to find comfort in, the way numbers never lied or left or broke promises. "That sounds lonely," Lena said. "It's safe." "Same thing sometimes." Daniel couldn't argue with that. Lena told him about her family in Ohio, the pressure to settle down, get married, have kids, follow a prescribed path she'd never felt fit her shape. About the guilt of choosing ambition over tradition, the fear that she'd wake up at 50 and regret everything. "Do you want kids?" Daniel asked. "Someday, maybe. If the right situation presents itself. But I'm not going to force it just because I'm supposed to." She stirred her latte, thoughtful. "What about you? Would you want more?" The question caught him off guard. He'd never considered it. After his ex-wife left, after the devastation and the chaos and the years of barely surviving single parenthood, he'd assumed that chapter was closed. "I don't know," he said honestly. "I never thought I'd find someone willing to take on a package deal." "You're not a package deal. You're a person who happens to have a daughter. There's a difference." "Most people don't see it that way." "Then they're idiots." The vehemence in her voice made him smile. "You don't even know me. I know enough. I know you opened your home to a stranger who had no right to be there. I know you prioritize your daughter above everything. I know you're kind even when you're scared. That's more than most people show in a lifetime, let alone a couple of hours." Daniel felt something unfurl in his chest, something that had been closed tight for years. Hope, maybe, or hunger. The dangerous realization that he wanted more than the safe, small life he'd built. They stayed at the cafe for 3 hours, long past when their coffee went cold, talking until the barista started giving them pointed looks. When they finally left, the sun was setting, painting the street in gold and amber. "This was nice," Lena said, walking slowly beside him, their shoulders almost touching. "It was. Can we do it again?" "I'd like that." They stood outside her house, her actual house this time, and Daniel felt the pull of something inevitable, something that had started the moment he'd heard water running in his bathroom and chosen curiosity over fear. "Good night, Daniel," Lena said softly. Good night, Lena. He walked the two houses back to his own, feeling lighter than he had in years, feeling dangerous and alive and terrified. Inside, Mia was waiting up, pretending to read but clearly watching the door. How was your coffee? She asked, far too casually. Good. Just good? Really good. Mia grinned. Told you that you liked her. Daniel couldn't deny it anymore. He did like her, more than was probably wise, more than was safe. But for the first time in 7 years, safe didn't feel like enough. The coffee dates became weekly, then twice weekly, then a rhythm Daniel stopped questioning. Every Thursday and Sunday, they'd meet at the same cafe, claim the same booth by the window, and let the world shrink to just the two of them. Lena brought stories from her new job, the office politics, the challenging projects, the small victories that made her eyes light up. Daniel brought pieces of himself he'd kept locked away for years, memories of who he used to be before single fatherhood consumed everything else. It was easy with her, dangerously easy. You need to bring Mia next time, Lena said one Sunday in late October, wrapping her hands around a pumpkin spice latte that Daniel had secretly judged her for ordering. I feel like I'm getting to know you in pieces, and she's the most important piece. Daniel's chest tightened. This was the moment he'd been dreading and anticipating in equal measure. The moment where his two worlds would collide, where the fantasy of stolen coffee dates would meet the reality of his actual life. She's 7, he said carefully. She asks a lot of questions. She gets attached easily. I don't want to confuse her if this is just what? Lena's eyes were steady on his. What do you think this is, Daniel? The question hung between them, loaded and urgent. Daniel realized he'd been avoiding defining it, avoiding the weight of naming what they were building. Because naming it meant acknowledging how much he wanted it, how much it would hurt to lose it. I don't know, he said honestly. I haven't done this in a long time. Haven't wanted to. And now? Now I'm terrified that I want it too much. Lena reached across the table and took his hand, her thumb tracing circles on his palm. I'm terrified too. I just moved here. My career is just starting. I wasn't looking for this. But here you are and here we are, and I don't want to waste time pretending it's less than it is. What is it? Something real. Something worth being scared about. She squeezed his hand. Bring Mia. Let me meet her. Let me be part of your actual life instead of this bubble we keep hiding in. Daniel felt the walls he'd built around himself and his daughter trembling. Part of him wanted to run, to protect what he had, to keep Mia safe from another potential loss. But a larger part, the part that was tired of living small and scared, wanted to take the leap. Okay, he said. Sunday. Dinner at my place. But I warn you, she's going to interrogate you like a detective. Lena grinned. I survived breaking into your house. I think I can handle a 7-year-old. That week crawled by with excruciating slowness. Daniel cleaned the house 3 times, changed the menu 4 times, and had several minor panic attacks about what this meant, what he was doing, whether he was being selfish or brave or just foolish. Mia, for her part, was thrilled. Is this like a date? She asked Wednesday night, watching him scrub the kitchen counters for the 2nd time that day. It's dinner with a friend. A friend you really like? Yes. A friend you want to kiss? Mia! She giggled, delighted by his discomfort. It's okay, Dad. I'm not a baby. I know how this works. You're 7. You don't know how any of this works. I know more than you think. She hopped up on the counter he'd just cleaned, swinging her legs. Is she nice? Very nice. Is she pretty? Yes. Does she make you happy? The question was so simple, so direct, so impossibly complicated. Daniel looked at his daughter, her mother's eyes, his stubborn chin, a whole person he'd built his life around, and told her the truth. She does. She makes me feel like myself again, like I'm more than just your dad. Mia considered this seriously. You've always been more than just my dad. You just forgot for a while. Sunday arrived with the weight of an audition, an interview, a test Daniel desperately wanted to pass. He made lasagna because it was the one dish he knew he couldn't screw up, set the table with actual placemats instead of paper towels, and tried not to watch the clock. Lena arrived at exactly 6, holding a bottle of wine and a bouquet of flowers that she handed to Mia instead of him. "Hi," she said, kneeling down to Mia's eye level. "I'm Lena. I'm the neighbor who accidentally broke into your house and stole your dad's shower." Mia's eyes went wide. "That was you?" "That was me. Pretty embarrassing, right?" "Dad said it was an honest mistake." "Your dad is very generous. I was mortified." Lena smiled, warm and genuine. "I brought you flowers as an apology for being the weird neighbor." Mia took the bouquet carefully, studying Lena with the serious intensity only children could manage. "Do you like soccer?" "I've never played, but I like watching." "Do you like pasta?" "Love it." "Do you make my dad smile?" Lena glanced up at Daniel, who was standing frozen in the doorway, watching this interaction with his heart in his throat. "I try to." "Does it work?" Mia looked at her father, then back at Lena. "Yeah, he smiles different now, like he means it." "Then I'll keep trying." Whatever test Lena had just passed, Daniel saw it in the way Mia's shoulders relaxed, the way she took Lena's hand and led her to the kitchen to show her the table she'd helped set, the artwork on the fridge, the soccer trophy that represented her one season of glory. Dinner was chaos in the best possible way. Mia told Lena everything about her teacher who wore funny sweaters, about her best friend who moved away last year, about how her dad always burned the grilled cheese but made the best hot chocolate. Lena listened with complete attention, asked follow-up questions, treated Mia like a real person instead of an obstacle to navigate around. Daniel watched them together and felt something settle in his chest. This could work. This could be real. After dinner, Mia insisted on showing Lena her room, her toys, her collection of rocks from the park that Daniel had been trying to convince her to throw away for months. He cleaned up in the kitchen, listening to their voices drift down the hallway. Lena's low and warm, Mia's high and excited. When they emerged 20 minutes later, Mia was holding Lena's hand like they'd known each other for years. "Lena says you used to play guitar," Mia announced. "Why did you stop?" Daniel shot Lena a look. "I mentioned it once." "It seemed important," Lena said unapologetically. "There wasn't time. After your mom left, I had to focus on me." Mia's voice went quiet. "You gave up stuff because of me. Not because of you. For you. There's a difference." Daniel knelt down, pulled her close. "Everything I gave up gladly. You're worth more than any hobby or dream or plan I ever had. But you were sad. Sometimes, but never because of you." Mia looked at him with those two wise eyes. "Maybe you could play again. If you wanted to." Lena could listen. It was such a simple suggestion, such a small thing, but it cracked something open in Daniel that had been sealed shut for years. The idea that he could want something for himself. That he could be more than just Mia's father. That there was room in his life for music and love and all the messy, complicated things he'd convinced himself he couldn't have. "Maybe I will," he said softly. After Mia went to bed, Daniel and Lena sat on the porch with the wine she'd brought, watching the street settle into darkness. The night was cool, the kind of autumn evening that promised winter, but hadn't fully committed yet. "She's amazing," Lena said. "You've done an incredible job with her." "I've tried. Some days better than others." "She loves you completely. You know that, right?" "I know, it's the only thing that kept me going some days." Lena leaned against him, her head on his shoulder, and Daniel wrapped his arm around her like it was the most natural thing in the world, like they'd been doing this for years instead of weeks. "Can I tell you something?" she said quietly. "Anything." "I didn't think I wanted this. A ready-made family, the complications, the responsibility. I thought I wanted my career and my freedom and no attachments. But sitting at your table tonight, listening to Mia talk about rocks and soccer, watching you be this incredible father, I realized I was wrong about what I wanted." Daniel's heart hammered. "What do you want?" "This, you, her, all of it." She lifted her head, looked at him in the dim porch light. "Is that crazy? We've known each other barely 2 months." "It's completely crazy." But I want it too, so much it scares me." Lena kissed him then, soft and sure, and Daniel felt 7 years of loneliness dissolve in that single moment, felt himself become more than a father, more than a survivor, more than a man who'd forgotten how to want. When they pulled apart, Lena was smiling. "I should go. Early meeting tomorrow." "Stay." The word came out before Daniel could stop it, urgent and raw. I don't mean just stay. Have another glass of wine. Talk to me. I'm not ready for this night to end." So she stayed. They talked until midnight, until the wine was gone and the stars were bright overhead. They talked about everything and nothing, about the future they were both afraid to name and the past they were both trying to move beyond. When Lena finally left, walking the short distance to her own house, Daniel stood on his porch and watched her go, feeling like his life had just expanded into something larger, richer, more terrifying than anything he'd planned. Inside, he found Mia sitting on the stairs in her pajamas, clearly having snuck out of bed to spy. "I like her," Mia announced. "You should keep her." "People aren't things you keep, sweetheart." "You know what I mean. You should make her want to stay." "And how do I do that?" Mia shrugged with the confidence of someone who'd already figured it out. "Just be you. That's enough." Daniel pulled her into a hug, overwhelmed by his daughter's wisdom, by the simple faith that he could be enough for someone. That love didn't have to be complicated or earned or fought for. That sometimes it just was. The next few months unfolded with an ease that Daniel didn't trust at first. He kept waiting for the catch, the collapse, the moment when reality would intrude and shatter what they were building. But it didn't come. Lena became part of their routine seamlessly. She joined them for Sunday dinners, helped with homework when Daniel was stuck at work late, showed up at Mia's soccer games and cheered louder than anyone. She brought color into their lives, fresh flowers for the table, spontaneous pizza nights, laughter that filled the quiet spaces Daniel had learned to accept. She also brought challenges, questions about where this was going, about what they were to each other, about whether Daniel was ready for something serious or just grateful for companionship after years alone. "I need to know this is real," she said one night in December, after Mia had gone to bed and they were cleaning up dinner together. "I need to know you're choosing this, choosing us, not just accepting it because it's convenient." Daniel stopped drying dishes, turned to face her fully. "You think this is convenience? I think you're a good man who's been alone a long time. I think you might be confusing comfort with commitment." The accusation stung because part of him wondered if she was right, if he was holding back, protecting himself, keeping one foot out the door in case everything fell apart. "I'm scared," he admitted. "I'm terrified of what happens if this doesn't work, of what it would do to Mia, to me, but that doesn't mean it's not real." "Then prove it." "How?" Lena set down the dish she was holding, looked at him with eyes that demanded honesty. "Introduce me to people, not as your neighbor or your friend, as your partner. Let the world know that this matters to you, that I matter." Daniel realized she was right. He'd been keeping her separate, compartmentalized, not quite integrated into the rest of his life. It was safer that way, less vulnerable. But safe was exactly what he was trying to move beyond. "My company has a holiday party next week," he said. "Partners are invited. Come with me." "You mean it?" "Yes, I want everyone to know you're mine." Lena kissed him hard, and Daniel felt the last of his reservations crumble. This was real. This was worth the risk. The holiday party was everything Daniel hated: forced small talk, cheap wine, coworkers he barely knew acting like old friends. But Lena made it bearable. She charmed his boss, laughed at terrible jokes, held his hand under the table when the conversations got tedious. "Your girlfriend is wonderful," his colleague Sarah said during a lull. "How long have you been together?" "Girlfriend." The label landed with unexpected weight. Daniel glanced at Lena, who was watching him with quiet amusement, waiting to see how he'd answer. "Not long enough," he said, "but hopefully a very long time." Lena's smile could have lit the room. They left early, drove home through streets decorated with holiday lights, and Daniel felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Peace, certainty. The sense that his life was finally moving in the right direction. At home, the babysitter reported that Mia had gone down without trouble. They paid her, waited for her to leave, then collapsed on the couch together, exhausted and happy. Thank you for tonight, Lena said, curling against his side. For introducing me as yours, for making this official. Should have done it sooner. You did it when you were ready. That's what matters. They sat in comfortable silence, Daniel's fingers tracing patterns on her shoulder, both of them hovering in that space between waking and sleeping where the truth comes easier. I'm falling in love with you, Daniel said quietly. I think I have been since the morning you broke into my house. Lena lifted her head, looked at him with eyes that held the whole world. I'm already there. Have been for weeks. I was just waiting for you to catch up. He kissed her then, deep and slow and full of promise. Kissed her like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning. Kissed her like the future was certain instead of terrifying. When they finally pulled apart, Lena whispered against his lips, Stay with me tonight. I don't want to go home. I want to wake up here. Daniel's breath caught. They hadn't crossed that line yet, had been careful to keep things slow for Mia's sake, for their own protection. But he was tired of being careful, tired of holding back. Okay, he said. Stay. They moved to his bedroom quietly, carefully, trying not to wake Mia. Daniel felt like a teenager sneaking someone in, nervous and exhilarated in equal measure. But when Lena turned to him in the darkness, there was nothing uncertain about it. She kissed him like she meant it, like this was the beginning of everything instead of just one night. And for the first time in 7 years, Daniel let himself believe that happiness wasn't something that happened to other people, that he deserved this, that love could be simple instead of complicated, present instead of past. Morning came too soon. Daniel woke to find Lena beside him, her hair spread across his pillow, her breathing soft and even. He watched her sleep and thought about how much his life had changed in just 4 months, how she'd walked through the wrong door and somehow found exactly the right life. Mia's footsteps in the hallway made him tense. He hadn't thought this through, hadn't prepared what to say if his daughter found Lena in his bed. But before he could move, Lena's eyes opened, instantly alert. It's okay, she whispered. Let me. She slipped out of bed, still fully clothed from the night before, and opened the door before Mia could knock. Good morning, she said cheerfully. Want to help me make pancakes while your dad sleeps in? Mia's eyes darted between Lena and the bed where Daniel was pretending to sleep. He could feel her processing, calculating, deciding how to feel about this development. Does this mean your dad's girlfriend for real now? She asked. Would that be okay with you? Mia considered it seriously. Will you still come to my soccer games? Every single one. Will you still bring flowers? Whenever you want them. Will you make my dad keep smiling like that? Lena glanced back at Daniel, who'd given up the pretense of sleep. I'll do my absolute best. Mia nodded, satisfied. Then I guess it's okay, but I get to help pick the pancake shapes. Deal. They left together, Mia chattering about the different cookie cutters they could use, and Daniel lay in bed, overwhelmed by the simple domesticity of it all, by how natural Lena fit into their lives, by how much he wanted this to last. He got up, pulled on a shirt, and joined them in the kitchen. Lena was standing at the stove, Mia on a stool beside her, both of them laughing about something. The morning light made everything golden, perfect, like a photograph of a life he'd stopped believing he could have. There's coffee, Lena said without turning around, like she'd been making coffee in his kitchen for years. Daniel poured a cup, leaned against the counter, and watched his 2 favorite people make pancakes in the shapes of stars and hearts, and one attempted soccer ball that looked more like a misshapen blob. This was it. This was the life he wanted, simple and complicated, messy and perfect, terrifying and worth every moment of fear. The pancakes were slightly burned. The kitchen was a disaster. Mia got syrup in her hair, and Daniel had never been happier. The winter months passed in a blur of contentment that Daniel kept waiting to end. He'd learned not to trust happiness, not to lean into it fully, because every time he had, it had been ripped away. But Lena was relentless in her presence, in her insistence that this was real, that she wasn't going anywhere. By February, she had a drawer at his house. By March, half her closet had migrated 2 doors down. By April, they'd stopped pretending she lived anywhere else. I'm paying rent on a house I haven't slept in for 3 months, Lena said one evening, sitting cross-legged on his couch while Mia did homework at the kitchen table. That seems wasteful. Daniel's heart seized. This was the conversation he'd been dreading and hoping for in equal measure. The one where they made it official, where temporary became permanent, where he had to decide if he was brave enough to truly let her in. "Are you asking to move in?" he said carefully. "I'm observing that I basically already have." She looked at him with those steady eyes that saw through every defense he'd ever built. "But if you're not ready, I understand. I can keep paying for a house I never use. It's only money." "It's not about money." "Then what's it about?" Daniel glanced at Mia, who was very obviously not doing her math homework anymore, her pencil frozen mid-equation as she listened to every word. He should probably have this conversation in private, away from his daughter's eager ears. But Mia was part of this equation. Her opinion mattered as much as his fear. "What do you think, Mia?" he asked. "Should Lena officially move in with us?" Mia's face lit up like Christmas morning. "Yes, then she'd be here all the time, and we could have pancakes every weekend, and she could help me with my science project, and—" Okay, Daniel laughed, overwhelmed by his daughter's enthusiasm. "I think that's a yes." "A very enthusiastic yes," Lena said, smiling. Then her expression turned serious. "But I need to hear it from you, Daniel. Not just that it's okay with Mia, that it's what you want." He looked at her sitting on his couch, wearing one of his sweatshirts, her feet tucked under her, completely at home in his space. He thought about the mornings waking up next to her, the evenings cooking dinner together, the nights falling asleep to the sound of her breathing. He thought about how she'd taken his small, careful life and made it expansive again. "I want you here," he said. "I want you here permanently. I want to stop pretending you're visiting and start acknowledging that this is your home too." "You're sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." Lena closed the distance between them, kissed him softly while Mia made exaggerated gagging sounds from the kitchen table. When she pulled back, her eyes were bright with tears she was trying not to shed. "Okay then," she said. "I guess I'm moving in." "Guess so." "This is crazy. We've known each other less than a year." "Completely crazy. But it feels right." "It does." They spent the next week moving Lena's belongings, collapsing her house 2 doors down into Daniel's life. It should have been chaotic, overwhelming, a disruption of the careful order he'd maintained for years. Instead, it felt like pieces finally clicking into place. Lena's books filled the empty shelves in the living room. Her artwork went up on the walls. Her coffee mugs joined his in the cabinet. The house that had been a monument to Daniel's solitary survival became something warmer, fuller, alive with the evidence of shared life. Mia helped arrange Lena's things with the seriousness of an interior designer, debating where each item should go, making sure Lena's presence was felt in every room. Daniel watched his daughter claim Lena as family with an ease that made his chest ache. "She's good for you," his mother said when he called to tell her about the new arrangement. "I can hear it in your voice. You sound like yourself again." "I didn't realize I'd stopped." "You've been in survival mode for 7 years, sweetheart. You forgot how to actually live. I'm glad she's reminding you." But even as everything settled into a new, comfortable rhythm, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that he was waiting for the other shoe to drop. That happiness this complete couldn't possibly last. That he'd wake up one morning and Lena would be gone, having realized she'd made a mistake. That signing up for instant family was more than she'd bargained for. His fear manifested in small ways. He'd watch her get ready for work and wonder if she resented being tied down. He'd see her with Mia and worry that the responsibility was too much. He'd catch himself holding back, protecting himself, preparing for the inevitable loss. Lena noticed. "You're pulling away," she said one night in May, after Mia was asleep. They were in bed, the space that should have felt intimate and safe, but Daniel's body was tense, his mind somewhere else. "You're physically here, but emotionally, you're already gone. Talk to me." "I'm fine." "You're not. You haven't been fine for weeks. What's going on?" Daniel stared at the ceiling, trying to find words for the formless anxiety that had been building in his chest. "I keep waiting for you to leave, for you to realize this isn't what you signed up for the novelty to wear off and reality to set in." Lena propped herself up on one elbow, looking down at him with an expression caught between hurt and frustration. Do you really think that's who I am? Someone who makes commitments lightly and walks away when things get hard? No. But I also didn't think my ex-wife was that person, and look how that turned out. The comparison landed heavy between them. Daniel saw Lena flinch, saw the wound his words created, and immediately regretted them. I'm not her, Lena said quietly, her voice tight with controlled emotion. I'm not going to punish you for what she did. But you can't keep punishing me for it either. You can't keep one foot out the door waiting for me to prove I'm just like her. I'm not. You are. You're so terrified of being hurt again that you won't fully commit. You won't let yourself believe this is real. And I get it, Daniel. I understand why, but I can't compete with a ghost. I can't prove myself against someone who already destroyed your trust. Daniel sat up, running his hands through his hair, feeling the weight of his own damage pressing down on him. I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to stop being afraid. You choose to trust me. Every single day you make the choice to believe I'm staying. That's how. What if I can't? Lena's eyes filled with tears, and Daniel saw real fear there for the first time since they'd met. Then we have a problem. Because I can't live in a relationship where I'm constantly having to prove I'm not going to leave. I can't build a life with someone who's already planning for it to end. The ultimatum hung between them, and Daniel felt the foundation of everything they'd built starting to crack. He'd been so focused on protecting himself that he hadn't considered he might be the one doing the damage. I love you, he said desperately. You know that, right? I do. But love isn't enough if you don't also trust me. If you can't believe in us. I want to. Then do it. Stop waiting for me to fail. Stop testing me. Just be here, fully, the way I am. Daniel pulled her close, buried his face in her hair, and tried to push past the fear that had become so familiar he'd mistaken it for wisdom. I'm sorry, I'll try. I promise I'll try. They held each other in the darkness, both of them aware that something fundamental had shifted. That they'd reached a crossroads where Daniel had to choose trust or self-protection, the future or the past. The next morning, Daniel woke before Lena and lay watching her sleep, studying the curve of her face, the rise and fall of her breathing. He thought about what she'd said, about choosing trust every day, about how fear was keeping him from fully experiencing the life he'd been given. He got up quietly, made coffee, and sat at the kitchen table with his laptop. There was something he needed to do, something he'd been avoiding because it meant acknowledging that this was permanent, that Lena wasn't temporary. When she emerged from the bedroom an hour later, rubbing sleep from her eyes, he had documents pulled up on the screen. What are you doing up so early? She asked, pouring herself coffee. Looking at houses? Lena froze mid-pour. What? Bigger houses, with yards, room for an office for you, a bigger bedroom for Mia, space for us to actually grow. He turned the laptop so she could see. This one has 4 bedrooms and a garage you could convert to a studio if you wanted. This one has a backyard big enough for a garden. Lena set down the coffee pot, staring at him like he'd grown a second head. You're looking at houses. Houses for us. For us. For our family. Daniel stood up, took her hands in his. You were right last night. I've been planning for this to end instead of planning for it to continue. So I'm choosing. I'm choosing you, choosing us, choosing to believe this is forever. Tears spilled down Lena's cheeks. You mean it? I mean it. I want to buy a house with you. I want to build a life that's ours, not just mine that you've moved into. I want to stop being afraid and start being present. She kissed him hard, coffee-flavored and tear-soaked and full of relief. I thought I'd lost you. I thought your fear was bigger than your love. It almost was. But you're worth fighting for. This is worth fighting for. They spent the morning looking at listings, dreaming about bigger lives and better futures. Mia came out of her room to find them huddled over the laptop, pointing at photos of houses, and immediately inserted herself into the conversation. I want a big backyard, she announced, and a room that's not next to Dad's, so I don't have to hear you guys being gross. We're not gross, Daniel protested. You're super gross. You kiss all the time. Lena laughed, pulled Mia onto her lap. What else do you want in our new house? Wait, we're really moving? If we find the right place, yes. Mia's face went through a complicated series of emotions: excitement, anxiety, uncertainty. But this is our house. This is where we've always lived. Daniel understood. This house was their history, the place where he'd raised Mia alone, where they'd survived the hardest years. Leaving it meant leaving that chapter behind, acknowledging that their family was changing, growing, becoming something new. It is, he said gently, and we've made good memories here. But we can make better memories somewhere bigger, somewhere that has room for all of us. Will I still go to the same school? We'll stay in the same area. Everything else stays the same except our address. Mia thought about this seriously, the way she approached all major decisions with the gravity of someone much older. Finally, she nodded. Okay, but I get to help pick which one. Deal. They spent the next 2 months house hunting, a process that was simultaneously exhausting and exhilarating. They looked at dozens of houses, each with their own charms and flaws. Mia vetoed anything without a proper backyard. Lena eliminated anything that didn't have good natural light. Daniel focused on practical things like school districts and commute times and whether the foundation was solid. It was the last house they looked at that stopped all 3 of them in their tracks. It was older than the others, a craftsman-style home with a wraparound porch and a backyard that backed onto a small wooded area. It needed work. The kitchen was outdated, the bathrooms needed renovation, the hardwood floors were scratched and dull. But it had good bones and enormous potential. This is it, Lena said, standing in the living room with sunlight streaming through the original glass windows. This is our house. It needs a lot of work, Daniel cautioned, but even as he said it, he was mentally calculating renovation costs, imagining what the space could become. All good things need work, Lena said, looking at him meaningfully. Mia ran through the rooms, her footsteps echoing on the bare floors, calling out discoveries. There's a reading nook, and the backyard has a tree perfect for a swing, and my room has 2 windows. They made an offer that day. It was accepted 2 days later. Suddenly, the abstract idea of a future together became concrete and real, anchored in mortgage documents and inspection reports and paint samples. The process of buying the house, of combining their finances, of making joint decisions about their shared future forced Daniel to confront every remaining fear he'd been holding on to. Lena was patient but firm, refusing to let him backslide into self-protection, insisting that they were partners in every sense of the word. You keep trying to handle everything alone, she said one evening, when he'd spent 3 hours researching contractors without consulting her. You keep making decisions like this is your house, and I'm just living in it. That's not... It is. You're so used to doing everything yourself that you can't accept help. You can't share the responsibility. She took the laptop from him, closed it firmly. This is our house, our life, our decisions. You have to let me in all the way, Daniel, not just the easy parts. She was right. He'd have been so focused on not being a burden, on maintaining his independence, that he'd forgotten what partnership actually meant. Shared responsibility, shared stress, shared everything. I'm sorry, he said. I'm still learning how to do this. I know, and I'm patient, but you have to actually try to learn, not just apologize and then do the same thing again. I will. I am. And he did. Slowly, deliberately, Daniel started making space for Lena in every aspect of his life. He asked her opinion on contractors. He let her handle some of the renovation decisions. He stopped trying to shield her from the stress and started sharing it. It was harder than he expected, this vulnerability, but it was also liberating. They moved into the new house in late July, in the middle of a heat wave that made carrying boxes feel like a form of torture. Friends showed up to help. People from Lena's work, parents from Mia's school, neighbors from their old street who'd become invested in their story. Daniel stood in the chaos of boxes and furniture and sweating helpers, watching Lena direct traffic with the competence of a general, watching Mia excitedly show people her new room, and felt something shift inside him. This was his family. This messy, complicated, beautiful family that he'd been too afraid to fully claim. You good? Lena asked, appearing at his side with a cold water bottle and a smudge of dust on her cheek. I'm perfect. Liar. You're sweating through your shirt and we've been at this for 6 hours. Okay, I'm exhausted and disgusting. But I'm also happy. She kissed his sweaty cheek. Good, because we're just getting started. The first night in the new house was chaotic. Half their belongings were still in boxes. They couldn't find the sheets for Mia's bed and had to improvise with sleeping bags. They ordered pizza because the kitchen was too disorganized to cook in. They ate sitting on the floor of the empty living room, surrounded by the evidence of their shared life, and it was perfect. "This is our house," Mia said wonderingly, looking around at the space. "Our real house." "It is," Lena confirmed. "What do you think?" "I think it's better than the old one. It feels bigger, like there's room for more stuff to happen." More stuff to happen. Daniel loved that phrasing, the openness of it, the possibility. That night, after Mia finally crashed in her sleeping bag, Daniel and Lena lay on a mattress on the floor of their new bedroom, too tired to set up the bed frame, staring at the ceiling and listening to the unfamiliar sounds of a different house. "Are you happy?" Lena asked quietly. "Exhausted, but happy? No regrets?" "None." He turned to face her in the darkness. "Thank you for pushing me, for not letting me stay safe and small, for making me believe in this. You did the hard part. You chose to trust. I'm still choosing every day." "I know, and so am I." They fell asleep like that, holding hands on their mattress on the floor, in a house that was too big and too empty and full of potential. In a life that was still being written, still being discovered, still unfolding in ways neither of them could predict. But for the first time in years, Daniel wasn't afraid of the unknown. He was ready for it. The call came 3 weeks later, on a Tuesday morning that started like any other. Daniel was making coffee while Lena got ready for work, and Mia searched for her other soccer cleat. Normal, routine, safe. His phone rang with an unfamiliar number. He almost didn't answer. "Is this Daniel Brooks?" A woman's voice, professional but warm. "Speaking." "This is Jennifer Martinez from Cortex Technologies. I'm calling regarding Lena Whitmore's application for our senior director position." Daniel's stomach dropped. "I'm sorry, what?" "We're conducting reference checks for finalists in our hiring process. Lena listed you as a personal reference. Is now a good time?" "I think there's been a mistake. Lena already has a job. She's not looking for anything else." There was a pause on the other end. "I see. Well, her application was submitted 2 months ago, and she's been through 3 rounds of interviews. The position is in Seattle. I was under the impression she'd discussed this with her family." Seattle. 3,000 miles away. 2 months of secret interviews while they were buying a house together, moving in together, building a life. "No," Daniel said, his voice hollow. "She didn't mention it." He ended the call and stood frozen in his kitchen, the coffee maker hissing behind him, everything he'd just started to believe in crumbling around him. Lena appeared in the doorway, her work bag over her shoulder, smiling until she saw his face. "What's wrong?" "Seattle," he said. "Tell me about Seattle." And just like that, the happiness ended. The color drained from Lena's face. Her bag slipped from her shoulder and hit the floor with a dull thud that echoed in the sudden silence between them. "Daniel, I can explain." "Can you?" His voice was calm, too calm, the kind of calm that came before something shattered. "Because I just got a call from Cortex Technologies asking for a reference. They said you've been interviewing for 2 months. 2 months, Lena. While we were buying this house, while we were moving in together, while I was learning to trust you. I know how this looks." "How it looks?" "How it looks is like you've been planning your exit since the moment we signed the mortgage. How it looks is like everything you said about choosing us, about being here permanently, was a lie." "It wasn't a lie," Lena's voice cracked. "It isn't a lie. I love you. I love Mia. I love this life we're building." "Then why?" Daniel's control started to slip, his voice rising. "Why would you interview for a job 3,000 miles away without telling me? Why would you let me believe we had a future when you were already planning to leave?" Lena pressed her hands to her face, and when she lowered them, her eyes were red but dry. "Because I'm terrified too. You're not the only one who's scared, Daniel. You're not the only one who doesn't know how to trust this. So you kept an exit strategy, just in case." "No." "Yes. I don't know. She moved toward him, but stopped when he stepped back. I submitted that application before we bought the house, before we'd even talked about moving in together. It was my dream job, Daniel, the kind of position I've been working toward my entire career. I sent in my resume thinking nothing would come of it. But something did come of it, and you kept going, 3 rounds of interviews while we were painting Mia's room, while we were picking out furniture together, while you were telling me to trust you. I was going to tell you. When? After you accepted? After you packed your bags? Before I made any decisions, I needed to know if it was even real before I brought it up, before I made you worry about something that might not happen. Daniel laughed, bitter and sharp. That's the problem, Lena. You made the decision not to tell me. You decided what I should and shouldn't worry about. You decided you could handle this alone instead of trusting me enough to share it. Like you shared everything with me? Lena's own anger was surfacing now, defensive and wounded. You want to talk about keeping secrets? You spent months planning for me to leave. You held back, waited for me to fail, never fully let me in. And the first time I'm not completely transparent, you act like I'm your ex-wife walking out the door. This is different. Is it? Or are you just looking for proof that you were right not to trust me? Looking for an excuse to say, I knew it. Everyone leaves eventually. The accusation landed like a physical blow. Daniel gripped the edge of the counter, trying to steady himself, trying to separate what was real from what was fear. Don't turn this around on me. Don't make this about my trust issues when you're the one who lied. I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you everything right away. There's a difference. Not to me, there isn't. They stared at each other across the kitchen, the space between them suddenly vast and unbridgeable. Upstairs, they could hear Mia moving around, blissfully unaware that her world was fracturing. What do you want me to say? Lena asked quietly. What do you need to hear? I need to hear that you're not taking it, that Seattle isn't on the table, that you choose this, choose us, without hesitation. I can't say that. The words hit Daniel like a freight train. What? I can't promise I'm not taking it because I don't know yet. They haven't made an offer. I don't know the salary, the benefits, the full scope of the role. I don't know if it's even something I could realistically accept. Lena's voice was shaking, but steady. But I also can't promise that I'd automatically turn it down without considering it. This is my career, Daniel, my future, and I won't apologize for wanting to at least explore my options. Even if it means leaving us? Even if it means having hard conversations about what our future looks like? Yes. Daniel felt something crack inside his chest. This was it, the moment he'd been waiting for, the proof that love wasn't enough, that commitment was conditional, that eventually everyone chose themselves. Then I guess we don't have anything else to talk about. Don't do that. Don't shut down and push me away because you're scared. I'm not scared. I'm realistic. You just told me you might choose a job over your family. I told you I need to consider all the facts before making a life-changing decision. That's not the same thing. Lena grabbed her bag from the floor, her movements sharp with frustration. But you know what? You're right. We don't have anything to talk about. Because you've already decided I'm leaving. You've already written the ending where I'm the villain and you're the victim. So why bother fighting for something you've already given up on? She walked toward the door, and Daniel felt panic surge through him. This was wrong. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. But his pride and his fear kept him frozen, kept the words locked in his throat. Lena, wait. She stopped, her hand on the doorknob, her back to him. If you walk out that door, if you go to work and pretend this conversation didn't happen, I don't know how we come back from this. Lena turned, and her face was streaked with tears she'd been holding back. Then stop me. Give me a reason to stay that's bigger than your fear. Tell me you love me enough to actually fight for this instead of just waiting for it to fail. Daniel opened his mouth, but nothing came out. The words were there. I love you, don't go, we can work this out. But they tangled with all his old wounds, all his old betrayals, all the evidence that loving someone wasn't enough to make them stay. Lena waited 5 seconds, 10, 15. Then she left. The door closed with a quiet click that felt like the end of everything. Daniel stood alone in the kitchen they'd painted together, in the house they'd bought together, and felt the full weight of his choice crash down on him. He'd let her go. He'd chosen fear over faith, self-protection over vulnerability, the familiar pain of abandonment over the terrifying risk of being hurt again. Upstairs, Mia called out, "Dad? Did Lena leave? I wanted to show her something." He couldn't answer, couldn't move, couldn't do anything but stare at the door and wonder how he'd just destroyed the best thing that had ever happened to him. His phone buzzed, a text from Lena. "I'm staying at my old house tonight. We both need space to think. I love you." That hasn't changed, but I need you to decide if you love me enough to trust me, actually trust me, not just say the words. Daniel read the message 3 times, each word a small knife in his chest. Then he went upstairs to face his daughter and explained that sometimes love wasn't enough, that sometimes people made mistakes too big to fix, that sometimes the happy ending didn't happen. Mia took one look at his face and knew. She's leaving, isn't she? Like Mom did. No, maybe. I don't know. What did you do? The question stung because it assumed he was at fault, but maybe he was. Maybe this whole disaster was his creation, his fear manifesting into reality, his inability to trust turning into a self-fulfilling prophecy. "I messed up," he admitted. "She got offered a job in Seattle and didn't tell me, and I got scared and angry and said things I shouldn't have said." "Is she taking it?" "She doesn't know yet." Mia's face crumpled. "I thought she was staying. I thought we were a family now." "We are." "We were." "I don't know anymore." His daughter looked at him with an expression far too old for her 8 years. "You love her?" "Yes." "Then fix it, like you taught me. When I mess up with my friends, you always say to apologize and make it right. So do that." "It's more complicated than that, sweetheart." "Why? Because you're grown-ups? Grown-ups make everything more complicated than it needs to be." She crossed her arms, looking so much like her mother. In that moment, it hurt. "You're scared she'll leave like Mom did, but Lena isn't Mom. And if you keep treating her like she is, you're going to make her leave even if she didn't want to." The simple truth of it broke something open in Daniel. His 8-year-old daughter could see what he'd been too blind to recognize. He wasn't protecting himself by pushing Lena away. He was ensuring the exact outcome he feared most. "When did you get so wise?" he asked, pulling Mia into a hug. "Someone has to be the smart one in this family." Daniel spent the day in a fog of regret and indecision. He went through the motions, made Mia breakfast, did laundry, unpacked boxes they still hadn't dealt with, but his mind was 3 blocks away where Lena was probably packing, probably making plans, probably realizing she'd made a mistake tying herself to someone so damaged. His phone stayed silent. No calls. No texts. Nothing. By evening, the silence was unbearable. He fed Mia dinner, got her ready for bed early, and sat in the living room staring at his phone like it might spontaneously offer solutions. Finally, he called his mother. "I ruined everything," he said when she answered. "Tell me what happened." He explained the whole disaster, the phone call, the fight, Lena leaving, his complete inability to respond like a rational human being instead of a terrified child. His mother listened without interrupting, then sighed heavily. "You know what your problem is?" "I'm sure you're about to tell me." "You're so afraid of being hurt that you hurt yourself first. You sabotage anything good because you think if you destroy it on your terms, it'll hurt less than if it's destroyed by someone else." "That's not—" "It is. You did it with your career when you turned down that promotion because you were afraid you couldn't handle it. You did it with friends who tried to get close after your divorce. And now you're doing it with Lena, the first woman who's made you happy in years, because she dared to have ambitions that might complicate your life. She lied to me. She withheld information, which isn't the same thing, and she withheld it because she was scared too, Daniel. Scared of your reaction, scared of losing what you'd built, scared of having to choose between love and career." His mother's voice softened. "You're not the only one who's terrified here, but at least she was brave enough to take the risk. You just ran away." "I didn't run away. She left. After you made it clear you'd already decided she was going to betray you. You gave her no room to be human, to be complicated, to make mistakes. You expected perfection because anything less confirmed your worst fears." Daniel closed his eyes, feeling the truth of it settle into his bones. "I don't know how to fix this." Start by figuring out what you actually want, not what you're afraid of losing, not what you think you deserve, what you actually want if fear wasn't a factor. I want her. I want our life together. I want to believe this can work. Then tell her that and mean it, not just the words, but the commitment behind them. Show her you're willing to fight for this instead of running from it. After hanging up, Daniel sat in the dark house thinking about everything his mother had said, thinking about Mia's simple wisdom, thinking about how Lena had looked when she'd begged him to give her a reason to stay, and he'd said nothing. He'd been so focused on protecting himself that he'd forgotten what he was protecting, so busy building walls that he'd locked himself in a prison of his own making. At 10 p.m., unable to stand it anymore, he texted Lena, "Can we talk?" The response came 30 minutes later. "Tomorrow. I need tonight to think." Fair enough. He'd had months to work through his issues. He could give her one night, but sleep was impossible. Daniel lay in their bed, his bed now maybe, and stared at the ceiling, replaying every moment of their fight, every word he'd said and hadn't said, every opportunity he'd had to choose love over fear and had failed. Morning came eventually, gray and cold despite it being August. Daniel got Mia ready for the day, arranged for her to spend it with a friend, and drove to Lena's old house with his heart in his throat. She answered the door in sweats and one of his old college t-shirts, her eyes red-rimmed and exhausted. They stood there looking at each other, neither quite sure how to start. "Come in," she said finally. The house was mostly empty, just the furniture she'd left behind when she'd moved into his place. It felt like a monument to the life she'd almost abandoned, the backup plan she'd kept just in case. They sat on opposite ends of the couch, the distance between them measured in more than just physical space. "I'm sorry," Daniel said, because it seemed like the only place to start. "I'm sorry for shutting down, for not giving you a chance to explain, for making you feel like you couldn't tell me about Seattle. I'm sorry too, for not being upfront from the beginning, for keeping it secret because I was afraid of how you'd react." Lena pulled her knees to her chest. "But Daniel, I need you to understand something. I wasn't keeping it secret because I was planning to leave. I was keeping it secret because I didn't want to hurt you with something that might not even happen. I get that now. I didn't yesterday, but I do now." "Do you?" "Because from where I'm sitting, you were just waiting for proof that I was going to abandon you. You were so ready to believe I'd leave that you didn't even consider I might stay." "You're right, I was. I am. I don't know how to trust that good things last. Every time I've believed in something, it's fallen apart." "So you're just going to keep expecting the worst? Keep pushing away anyone who gets close?" "No. I'm going to try to do better. To be better." Daniel moved closer, close enough to take her hand if she'd let him. "But I need you to help me. I need you to be patient while I learn how to believe that you're not going to leave, that this is real." Lena's eyes filled with tears. "I can't be the only one fighting for this, Daniel. I can't carry all the weight of trust while you stand on the sidelines waiting for me to drop it. I know. And I'm not asking you to. I'm asking for a chance to prove I can do this, that I can trust you, trust us, even when it's terrifying. What about Seattle?" The question hung heavy between them. Daniel took a breath, preparing to say something that might destroy everything or might save it. "Tell me about the job. What it is, why you want it, what it would mean for your career." Lena looked surprised. "You want to know about it?" "I want to know everything. I want to actually discuss this like partners instead of me just panicking and you just defending. So tell me." She did. She explained that it was a senior director position overseeing product development for an AI company, that it was everything she'd been working toward professionally, that it would essentially set up the rest of her career. She told him about the salary, nearly double what she made now, and the benefits and the opportunity to work with the best in the field. Daniel listened without interrupting, trying to hear it through her lens instead of his own fear. "It sounds incredible," he said when she finished. "It is. It would be a dream come true professionally. But it would mean leaving you and Mia, leaving this life we've built, starting over in a city where I don't know anyone, living 3,000 miles away from the people I love." She wiped her eyes. "And I don't know if any career opportunity is worth that cost." "What if it didn't have to be a choice?" Lena frowned. "What do you mean?" Daniel's heart was racing, but he forced himself to keep going. What if we came with you? To Seattle? Why not? Mia can go to school anywhere. I can find accounting work anywhere. We just bought this house, but we could sell it, take the loss, start fresh somewhere new. He was talking faster now, the idea taking shape as he spoke. You've been following me, fitting into my life, sacrificing your dreams for my comfort. What if I did the same for you? You would do that? Uproot Mia, leave everything you know, move across the country? For you, yes. If that's what it takes to prove I'm all in, that I choose you, that I trust this enough to rebuild our life around it. Lena was crying openly now. That's the most romantic and terrifying thing anyone's ever offered me. Is it crazy? Completely crazy. She moved closer, took his face in her hands. But so is everything about us. We've been crazy from the start. So that's a yes? You'll take the job and we'll move? I don't know. I need to think about what's best for all of us, not just me. I need to make sure we're making this decision together, rationally, not just as a grand gesture to prove something. Daniel kissed her softly, tasting salt and coffee and the possibility of a future. Then let's think about it together, really together. No more secrets, no more keeping things separate. We make this decision as a family. You really mean that? I really do. I'm done being afraid, Lena. I'm done protecting myself from the best thing that's ever happened to me. Whatever we decide about Seattle, we decide together. They held each other on that couch in her empty house, both of them crying, both of them scared, both of them finally honest about how much they had to lose and how much they wanted to fight for it. I love you, Lena whispered, even when you're impossible and stubborn and afraid. I love you too, even when you're secretive and spontaneous and willing to move 3,000 miles for a job. She laughed through her tears. We're a mess. The best kind of mess. They spent the rest of the day talking, really talking, about Seattle, about what it would mean for Mia, about Daniel's career prospects, about whether they were ready for such a massive change. They made lists of pros and cons, discussed logistics, looked at school districts and neighborhoods and cost of living. And somewhere in all that practical discussion, Daniel realized something crucial. The conversation itself was the point, not the decision they reached, but the fact that they were reaching it together. That Lena wasn't making plans alone, and he wasn't being left behind. They were partners, figuring it out as a team. I need to talk to Mia, Daniel said as evening approached. Before we make any final decisions, she needs to have a say. Agreed. This affects her as much as us. They picked Mia up together, a united front, and the relief on her face when she saw them holding hands made Daniel's chest ache. You fixed it, she said happily. We're working on it, Daniel corrected, but we need to talk to you about something important. Back at home, their actual home, not Lena's backup house, they sat Mia down and explained everything. The job offer, the possibility of moving, what it would mean for her life. Mia listened with the gravity she brought to all serious matters, her face cycling through emotions too complex for an 8-year-old to fully process. I'd have to leave my school? She asked. And my friends? Yes, Lena said gently. You'd have to start over in a new place, make new friends, which is really hard and really scary. But we'd all be together? Yes, all of us, as a family. Mia thought about this, chewing her lip the way she did when faced with difficult choices. What if I say no? Would you stay? Lena looked at Daniel, a question in her eyes. He nodded. If this isn't what's best for our family, I'll turn it down, Lena said. Your happiness matters more than any job. But it's your dream job. You and your dad are my dream life. The job is just a job. Mia seemed to weigh this carefully. Can I think about it? Of course. Take all the time you need. They let her go to her room, gave her space to process. Daniel and Lena sat together on the couch, exhausted and uncertain and closer than they'd been in days. Whatever she decides, Lena said quietly, I'm okay with it. I mean it. I'm not going to resent her or you if we stay. I know, but I also know what it's like to give up your dreams for family. I don't want that for you. Some dreams change. Some dreams become bigger than we imagined. She leaned her head on his shoulder. A year ago, my dream was just the perfect career. Now, it's the perfect career and the perfect family. And if I can only have one, I know which one matters more. An hour later, Mia emerged from her room with a piece of paper covered in her careful handwriting. I made my own list, she announced. Pros and cons. She'd written things like new adventure and Lena gets dream job in the pros column. In the cons, she'd listed leaving Emma and new school is scary and what if I don't make friends? This is a very thorough list, Daniel said seriously. I learned from the best. Mia sat down between them. I think we should go. Both adults stared at her. Really? Lena asked. Really? Because here's what I think. If Lena turns down her dream job for us, she might be sad about it later. And then I'll feel bad. But if we go to Seattle together, we get to have a new adventure as a family. And I might be scared, but I won't be alone. You'll both be there. Daniel pulled his daughter close, overwhelmed by her wisdom and her courage. You're sure? I'm sure. Besides, Seattle has the Space Needle. And I've never seen the Space Needle. Lena laughed, crying again, and pulled them both into a hug. Thank you. Thank you for being brave enough to take this leap with me. That's what families do, Mia said matter-of-factly. They take leaps together. And just like that, the decision was made. Not out of fear or obligation or resentment, but out of love and trust and the belief that together they could handle anything. Lena called Cortex Technologies the next morning and accepted the position. Daniel gave notice at his firm and started looking for opportunities in Seattle. They put the house on the market, began the overwhelming process of packing up their life again, this time heading towards something instead of running from it. It was terrifying. It was exhilarating. It was exactly the kind of crazy leap that defined their entire relationship. And for the first time since that phone call had shattered his world, Daniel felt at peace. Because he'd chosen trust over fear. He'd chosen to believe in their future instead of protecting himself from their past. He'd chosen love. The next 6 weeks were a controlled hurricane of change. Daniel had spent 7 years building a careful, predictable life. And now he was dismantling it piece by piece, boxing up everything familiar, preparing to leap into the unknown. Some mornings he woke up exhilarated. Other mornings he woke up terrified, convinced he was making the biggest mistake of his life. But every time the fear threatened to overwhelm him, he'd look at Lena packing boxes in the kitchen or helping Mia sort through toys she'd outgrown, and he'd remember why he was doing this. Not because he had to. Because he chose to. Because love required more than just saying the words. It required showing up, taking risks, proving through action that you meant what you promised. The house sold faster than expected to a young couple expecting their first child. Daniel watched them walk through the rooms he'd painted with Lena, imagining their own future in the space where he'd rebuilt his life, and felt the bittersweet ache of letting go. This house was supposed to be their forever home. Instead, it had become a stepping stone, a place where he'd learned he was capable of more than he'd believed. Any regrets? Lena asked the night before the movers came, both of them standing in the empty living room where they'd eaten pizza on the floor that first chaotic night. About the house? A few. About us? None. We're really doing this, moving across the country, starting completely over. Second thoughts? She turned to him, and in the dim light from the street, her face was serious. Constant second thoughts, followed immediately by knowing this is exactly what we're supposed to do. Is that normal? I think that's just called being human. Daniel pulled her close, breathed in the familiar scent of her shampoo, the one constant in all this chaos. We're going to mess this up sometimes. We're going to have moments where we wonder what we were thinking, but we're doing it together. That's what matters. When did you get so wise? I had a good teacher. She broke into my house and taught me how to take chances. Lena laughed against his chest. Best mistake I ever made. Mia appeared in the doorway, her sleeping bag tucked under her arm. They were camping out one last night in the empty house, a final goodbye before everything changed. Are we going to do this every time we move? She asked. Sleep on the floor and eat pizza? It's tradition now, Lena said. We have to honor it. Even when we're old? Especially when we're old. They spread out their sleeping bags in what had been the living room, ordered from the same pizza place that had fed them months ago, and told stories late into the night. Mia talked about what she'd miss. Her best friend Emma, her favorite tree in the backyard, the library where she knew exactly which section held the good books. But she also talked about what she was looking forward to: new adventures, the Space Needle, the ocean that was so much bigger than anything she'd seen before. Daniel listened to his daughter process her fear through excitement, turning anxiety into anticipation, and felt proud of the person she was becoming. Brave not because she wasn't scared, but because she was scared and moving forward anyway. "What about you, Dad?" Mia asked. "What are you excited about?" The question caught him off guard. He'd been so focused on the logistics, the fears, the massive disruption to everything safe and familiar that he hadn't let himself think about what might be good about this change. "I'm excited to see your mom chase her dreams," he said, reaching for Lena's hand. "I'm excited to discover a new city with my two favorite people. I'm excited to prove to myself that I'm braver than I thought I was." "What about you, Lena?" Mia asked. "I'm excited for all of it. The job, yes. But mostly I'm excited to build our life from scratch, to choose everything together, where we live, what our routines look like, what kind of family we want to be. We get a fresh start. Not many people get that." They fell asleep like that, the three of them in sleeping bags on the hard floor, choosing discomfort and togetherness over the ease of separate rooms. In the morning, the movers would come. In 3 days, they'd be in Seattle. But for now, they were here, together, suspended between the life they were leaving and the one they were building. The drive to Seattle took 4 days. They'd sold Daniel's car and were making the trip in Lena's SUV, the back seat filled with the essentials they couldn't trust to movers, Mia's favorite stuffed animals wedged between suitcases and pillows. They took the scenic route, turned necessity into adventure, stopped at roadside attractions and terrible diners and overlooks where the landscape stretched forever. Daniel had expected the trip to be stressful, full of "are we there yet?" and cramped muscles and mounting anxiety. Instead, it became something else entirely: a pilgrimage. A journey that gave them time to transition, to let go of what was behind and prepare for what was ahead. Somewhere in Montana, with Mia asleep in the back seat and the highway stretching empty before them, Lena said quietly, "I need to tell you something." Daniel's stomach clenched. Even now, even after everything, his first instinct was to brace for bad news. "I turned down part of the offer," she continued. "What part?" The salary they initially proposed was significantly higher, but it would have required constant travel. 60% of my time on the road, away from you and Mia. I negotiated for a slightly lower salary in exchange for a role that keeps me in Seattle. Home every night. Present for dinner and homework and soccer games. Daniel's throat tightened. "You didn't have to do that." "I did. Because this move isn't just about my career, it's about our family. And I won't sacrifice one for the other." She glanced at him, her eyes serious in the dashboard light. "I need you to know that. I need you to trust that when I say I'm choosing us, I mean it, even when it costs me something." That must have been a substantial pay cut. It was. But it was worth it. You're worth it. This is worth it. Daniel reached across the console and took her hand, overwhelmed by the quiet sacrifice she'd made without fanfare or expectation of gratitude. This was what commitment looked like. Not grand gestures, but daily choices to prioritize the people you loved. "Thank you," he said, inadequate but sincere. "Thank you for coming with me, for being brave enough to leave everything familiar because you believe in us." They drove in comfortable silence after that, mile markers ticking by, the landscape changing from plains to mountains to forest. With each mile, Daniel felt something shifting inside him. The fear was still there, but it was smaller now, manageable, contained by the larger truth that he wasn't doing this alone. They arrived in Seattle on a Friday afternoon, the city gray and drizzling in a way that felt somehow romantic instead of depressing. The apartment Lena had secured sight unseen was in a neighborhood called Wallingford, tree-lined streets and craftsman houses and coffee shops on every corner. It was smaller than the house they'd left, a 3-bedroom rental until they figured out where they wanted to buy. But the light was good and the view from the living room showed the Space Needle in the distance. "It's perfect," Mia declared, running from room to room, claiming the bedroom with the window seat as her own. "It's temporary," Lena reminded her. "Once we get settled, we'll find a permanent place." "But it's ours." For now. That's what matters. The movers arrived the next day, and they spent the weekend unpacking, arranging furniture, trying to make this unfamiliar space feel like home. Neighbors stopped by with welcome cookies and recommendations for the best Thai food in the area. The couple upstairs had a daughter Mia's age who played soccer. The woman next door was a teacher who knew the school Mia would be attending. By Sunday night, exhausted and surrounded by half-empty boxes, Daniel realized something surprising. He didn't miss their old life as much as he'd expected. Maybe it was the adrenaline of newness, or maybe it was the relief of having survived the change he'd been dreading. But sitting on their new couch, watching Mia color at the coffee table while Lena sorted through kitchen supplies, he felt something close to peace. "You're smiling," Lena observed. "Am I?" "You are. What are you thinking about?" "How a year ago I was convinced my life was as good as it could get, small and safe and predictable. And now I'm in a city I've never lived in, about to start over completely, and I'm happy. It doesn't make sense." Love rarely does. Mia's first day at her new school was harder than she'd let on. She came home quiet and withdrawn, went straight to her room without the usual chatter about her day. Daniel found her an hour later, crying into her pillow. "Hey, sweetheart, what's wrong?" "Everyone already has friends. They've known each other since kindergarten, and they have inside jokes, and I don't know anyone, and I ate lunch by myself, and I miss Emma, and I hate it here." Daniel's heart broke. This was his fault. He'd uprooted her, disrupted her life, forced her into this change because he'd been trying to prove something to Lena, to himself. "I'm sorry," he said, sitting on the edge of her bed. "I'm so sorry this is hard. You said it would be an adventure. Adventures can be hard. That doesn't mean they're not worth it. I want to go home." The words hit Daniel like a physical blow. This was the moment he'd been dreading, the proof that he'd made a terrible mistake, that choosing love had cost his daughter her happiness. Lena appeared in the doorway, must have heard the crying. She sat on Mia's other side, and together they bracketed her, a united front against the pain of being the new kid. "I felt the same way my first day at work," Lena said quietly. "Everyone knew each other, had their established teams, their lunch groups. I ate a sad sandwich at my desk and wondered what I'd gotten myself into." Mia lifted her head. "Really? Really? Change is uncomfortable, even when it's good change, even when we choose it." Lena smoothed Mia's hair back from her tear-stained face. "But you know what happened the second day?" "What?" "A girl from another department asked if I wanted to grab coffee. We talked for an hour. She's not my best friend or anything, but she made me feel less alone. Sometimes that's all we need. One person to make us feel less alone. What if that doesn't happen for me?" "It will. You're smart and funny and kind. People are going to want to be your friend. They just need time to discover how awesome you are." "How much time?" "I don't know, but however long it takes, we'll be here. Your safe place to come home to." Mia nodded slowly, processing this. Then she looked at Daniel. "Do you think we made a mistake, moving here?" It was the question that had been haunting Daniel since they'd made the decision. The fear that choosing love over stability would destroy the very thing he was trying to protect. "I think we made a brave choice," he said carefully, "and brave choices are almost always uncomfortable at first. But no, I don't think it was a mistake. Do you?" Mia thought about this with the seriousness she brought to all-important questions. "I don't know yet. Ask me again in a month." "That's fair." She wiped her eyes, sat up straighter. "Can we have pizza for dinner? I know it's not Friday, but I feel like today deserves pizza." "Today absolutely deserves pizza," Lena agreed. They ordered from a new place that wasn't as good as their old favorite, ate it in the living room surrounded by boxes that still needed unpacking, and told stories about their own awkward first days at new schools. Daniel shared about the time he'd accidentally walked into the girls' bathroom his first day of 6th grade. Lena told about showing up to class with her shirt inside out and not realizing until lunch. Mia laughed through her tears, and Daniel saw her resilience reasserting itself, her natural optimism fighting back against the difficulty of change. The next day was better, and the day after that. Slowly, painfully, Mia found her footing. A girl named Sophia asked to be her partner in science class. The teacher praised her essay on Charlotte's Web. The soccer coach put her in as starting forward. Within 3 weeks, Mia came home excited instead of defeated, chattering about Sophia and soccer and how her teacher had the funniest laugh. The crisis had passed. She was adapting, the way children do, with a flexibility adults often lost. Daniel's own adjustment took longer. He'd found work easily enough. A mid-level position at a tech company that paid well and offered good benefits. But the job was boring, unchallenging, nothing like the expertise he'd built over years at his old firm. He was starting over professionally, proving himself to people who didn't know his track record, and it chafed. "I feel like I'm going backward," he admitted to Lena one night after Mia was asleep. "Like I gave up everything I'd built for a job that any recent graduate could do." "So find something better. You don't have to stay in the first position you took." "It's not that simple. I don't have connections here. I don't have a reputation. I'm just another accountant in a city full of them." "You're a brilliant accountant with 15 years of experience and a track record of success. That doesn't disappear because you changed zip codes." Lena turned to face him, her expression fierce. "Don't diminish yourself because you're feeling insecure. You took this job because we needed stability while we transitioned, but you're not stuck there. You get to choose what comes next." "What if I don't know what I want?" "Then you figure it out, try things, explore. You spent 7 years putting your own dreams on hold for Mia. Maybe it's time to figure out what Daniel wants, separate from being a father or a partner. Just you." The idea was simultaneously terrifying and exhilarating. For so long, Daniel's identity had been tied to taking care of others. He'd forgotten he was allowed to want things for himself. Over the next few months, he started exploring. He took on freelance consulting projects that challenged him intellectually. He reached out to former colleagues, rebuilt his professional network in this new city. He discovered a small firm specializing in nonprofit accounting that aligned with values he'd forgotten he had. By December, he'd been offered a senior position at that firm, working with organizations doing meaningful work, using his skills in service of something larger than corporate profit. It paid slightly less than his old job, but the satisfaction was immeasurable. "I'm proud of you," Lena said when he came home with the news. "You didn't just replicate your old life, you built something better." "I learned from the best," he said, pulling her close. "Someone taught me that change doesn't have to be loss, that starting over can mean building something truer to who you actually are." As winter settled over Seattle, their new life began to feel less new and more simply like life. They found their favorite coffee shop, the one with the good pastries and the barista who remembered their orders. They discovered the Saturday farmers market, the hiking trails 30 minutes from their apartment, the Thai place that rivaled anything they'd had before. Mia thrived. She made the travel soccer team, brought friends home for dinner, stopped asking when they could visit their old city. She still missed Emma, kept in touch through video calls and carefully written letters, but she'd built a new community around herself with the adaptability of childhood. Lena's career flourished in ways that vindicated every sacrifice they'd made. She loved her team, the challenges, the sense that she was building something important. And true to her word, she was home every evening, present for dinner and bedtime stories and the daily minutiae that made up family life. But even as everything settled into place, Daniel felt something missing. Some final piece that would make this feel complete instead of just functional. He couldn't name it at first, this absence, but it nagged at him through the holiday season and into the new year. It wasn't until a rainy Saturday in February, almost exactly a year since Lena had moved into his old house, that he understood what was missing. They were at a home goods store looking at paint samples for Mia's room. She'd decided pink was babyish and wanted something more sophisticated, when Daniel found himself in the organization aisle, looking at shower curtains. And suddenly he was back in that bathroom, a year ago, hearing water running, gripping a baseball bat, convinced his life was about to be destroyed. He thought about how wrong he'd been, how the thing he'd feared had actually been the thing that saved him. "What are you smiling about?" Lena asked, appearing beside him with Mia in tow. "Do you remember the morning we met? When I broke into your house and used your shower? That morning?" "That morning. I was so scared, so convinced you were there to hurt me, and instead you were there to change everything." "Are we having a moment in the shower curtain aisle?" Lena teased. "Because this feels like we're having a moment." "I think we are." Daniel turned to face her fully, not caring that they were in public, that Mia was watching with increasing interest. I've been trying to figure out what's been bothering me. Why I still felt like something was incomplete, even though we have everything I ever wanted. And you figured it out in the shower curtain aisle? I figured it out in the shower curtain aisle. We've built this amazing life together. We've overcome every obstacle. We've proved we can handle anything, but we've been so focused on surviving the transition that we haven't celebrated what we've built. What are you saying? Daniel's heart was racing, but for once it wasn't from fear. I'm saying that I walked into the wrong door and found exactly the right life. I'm saying that you're the best thing that ever happened to me. I'm saying that I want to make this official, permanent, real. He dropped to one knee right there in the home goods store, between the shower curtains and the bathroom organizers, while Mia gasped, and Lena's eyes went wide. I don't have a ring yet, he said. I was planning to do this somewhere more romantic, with better preparation, but I can't wait another minute. Lena Whitmore, will you marry me? Will you officially be my family, my partner, my person for whatever comes next? Lena was crying, laughing, covering her mouth with her hands. You're proposing in a Target? I'm proposing in our story, right where it started. Wrong place, right person. Yes, she said, pulling him to his feet, kissing him in front of confused shoppers and delighted employees. Yes, 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 I'll marry you in Target or anywhere else you want. Mia launched herself at both of them, wrapping her arms around their waists. Does this mean Lena's officially my mom now? If she wants to be, Daniel said, looking at Lena with a question in his eyes. I want to be, Lena said, kneeling down to Mia's level. I've wanted to be since the first morning you helped me make pancakes, but only if you're okay with it. I'm more than okay with it. I've been calling you my mom to my friends for months. I was just waiting for it to be official. They stood there in the home goods store, this family that had formed from chaos and chance and the courage to keep choosing each other, and Daniel felt the final piece click into place. This was it. This was everything he'd been afraid to want, everything he'd convinced himself he didn't deserve. They picked out a ring together the next weekend, a simple band with 3 small stones, one for each of them, Lena said, a family instead of just a couple. They talked about a wedding, debated between something big and something small, and ultimately decided on small, intimate, just the people who mattered. They planned it for June, giving them enough time to make arrangements, but not so much time that the anticipation became stressful. Lena's parents flew in from Ohio, still skeptical about the whirlwind nature of the relationship, but warming when they saw how happy their daughter was. Daniel's mother cried happy tears and told Lena she'd been waiting for someone to make her son remember how to live. The morning of the wedding, Daniel woke up in their apartment, soon to be their house. They'd found a place in Fremont with a yard and a reading nook and enough space for all of them to grow, and felt calm. No panic, no second guessing, just certainty. Mia appeared in his doorway, already dressed in the blue dress she'd picked out, holding something small in her hands. I made you something, she said shyly, for your wedding. It was a drawing, carefully rendered in colored pencil. It showed 3 figures, him, Lena, and Mia, standing in front of a house. Above them, in Mia's careful handwriting, the right life behind the wrong door. Daniel's eyes burned with tears he didn't try to hide. It's perfect, sweetheart. It's absolutely perfect. I wanted you to remember how we got here, in case you ever get scared again. I'm not scared anymore. You know why? Why? Because I have you. I have Lena. I have this family we built together. That's stronger than any fear. The wedding was everything they'd wanted, small, sincere, full of love instead of performance. They got married in a botanical garden, surrounded by flowers and friends, and the people who'd supported them through every crazy turn of their story. Mia stood between them as they exchanged vows, part of the ceremony instead of just a witness, because this wasn't just Daniel marrying Lena. It was all 3 of them choosing to be a family. When Daniel said, I do, he meant more than just the vows he was speaking. He meant I choose trust over fear. I choose growth over safety. I choose this beautiful, complicated, imperfect love over the small life I convinced myself was enough. When Lena slipped the ring on his finger, she whispered, Thank you for following me through the wrong door. Best mistake I never made, he whispered back. The reception was at their house, Still mostly unpacked boxes and unfinished projects, but filled with laughter and music and the chaotic joy of people celebrating something worth celebrating. Mia gave a speech that made everyone cry, talking about how she'd gained a mom and learned that families could be built instead of just born into. As the evening wound down and the last guests filtered out, Daniel found Lena standing in the kitchen. They were slowly making their own, looking out the window at the backyard where Mia was showing her friend Sophia how to do a cartwheel. "Happy?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Deliriously. "You?" "More than I knew was possible." They stood there in comfortable silence, watching their daughter, because she was both of theirs now, officially and completely, laugh in the fading light. "Do you ever think about how close we came to missing this?" Lena asked. "If I'd walked into the right house that morning, if you'd called the police, if either of us had been too scared to take the chance?" "I try not to. It's too terrifying to think about all the ways this could have not happened. But it did happen. Against all logic, against all odds, we found each other." "We found each other," Daniel agreed. "And then we chose each other. Every single day after that, we kept choosing." Mia ran inside, breathless and glowing. "Sophia's mom says I can sleep over next weekend. Can I, please?" "Sure, sweetheart." "This is the best day ever," Mia declared, then ran back outside to share the news. Daniel looked at his wife, and felt the weight of gratitude settle over him. For wrong doors that led to right lives, for mistakes that became blessings, for the courage it took to let love in, even when everything about it felt dangerous and uncertain. "We did it," he said. "We actually did it." "Built a life out of chaos?" Lena smiled. "Yeah, we did, and it's beautiful." "It is." Later, after the guests had left and Mia had fallen asleep on the couch, exhausted from excitement, Daniel and Lena sat on their back porch, watching the stars appear one by one in the Seattle sky. "What do you think happens next?" Lena asked. "I have no idea. And for the first time in my life, that doesn't scare me." "No?" "No. Because whatever comes next, we'll figure it out together. That's all that matters." Lena leaned her head on his shoulder, and Daniel felt the simple completeness of the moment. No fear, no doubt. Just gratitude for the woman who'd walked through the wrong door and changed everything. "I love you," he said into the darkness. "I love you too. Thanks for not calling the cops that morning. Thanks for breaking into my house." They sat there until the stars were bright and full, until the neighbors' lights went out one by one, until it was just them and the quiet promise of tomorrow. A year ago, Daniel had been gripping a baseball bat, terrified of what was coming through his door. Now he knew. The best things in life often arrive disguised as disasters, as interruptions, as wrong turns that turned out to be exactly right. He'd walked into fear and found love. He'd chosen uncertainty and found home. He'd opened his heart despite every reason not to, and in return, he'd been given everything. Not a perfect life, not an easy one, but a real one, a true one. A life built on trust and courage, and the daily decision to keep showing up for each other. And as Mia stirred on the couch, and Lena's hand found his in the darkness, Daniel knew with absolute certainty that this was enough. More than enough. This was everything.